push out there. Bagley gives Detroit a big man that they really needed. Yes, they had Isaiah Stewart there, but I mean, Isaiah Stewart has a big man build, except he's only 6'8". So they needed somebody with that size there. That they had one of the whatever Plumlee was there last year, and they had Christian Wood the year before. Thin in the front court. Bagley, former number 2 overall pick. Incredible athleticism and a ton of upside. He's still only 22 years old. Change of scenery could be good for him. And like I said, with Jackson, Dwayne Casey has been really good at working with these reclamation project guys like Josh Jackson, Christian Wood. Jackson was good in Detroit. Christian Wood became one of the hottest commodities on the free agent market last offseason, 2020. So it's a good move all around, I think. The Celtics are bringing back a familiar face in center Daniel Tice. It cost them point guard Dennis Schroeder, who I would expect to be bought out and go play for a better team, the team that's in the playoff hunt. Bruno Fernando and Enes Freedom going to Houston. The Dallas Mavericks have traded big man Kristaps Porzingis to Washington for point guard Spencer Dinwiddie and forward Davis Bertans. Dinwiddie adds depth at the point guard with Jalen Brunson already there, and Brunson set to hit free agency. Also adds an insurance policy in case someone outbids Dallas for Brunson's services in the offseason. Bertrand is a stretch big, good three-point shot, plays the 4 most of the time. Signed a big contract extension a couple years ago, and it really hasn't been the same since, but been a solid player in his career. Maybe that returns in Dallas. Porzingis, highly drafted player, promising start to his career in New York, often described as a unicorn because he has a pretty lethal skill set, guard-like skill set at 7 feet tall. Again, good start to his career in New York. Been traded a couple times, has really become more of a three-point shooter. As someone who lives in Dallas and has watched Mavs games, has been to Mavs games, there are a lot of times when you will be screaming for him to go down and play in the paint because of his reluctance to play down there even at his size. If he can do that, that takes his game to the next level. I think teams have been betting on that for a while, and it just hasn't happened. But there's no denying he has an incredible ability and is a top-notch player in this league. It's just a matter of further developing and honing in on his game. And then the big one between Brooklyn and Philly, the Brooklyn Nets trade James Harden, who had been wanting a trade, for not only Ben Simmons, who wanted a trade in Philly, but sharpshooter Seth Curry, veteran center Andre Drummond, and 2 first-round picks are also going to Brooklyn. Well, Philly just gets Harden. I know Harden's a good player and considered one of the top players in the league, but that is a lot to give up in there, especially when Ben Simmons is also considered a star. Certainly the trade deepens Brooklyn's roster a bit. You got Andre Drummond, had a promising start to his career in Detroit, fizzled off a little bit in Cleveland and LA. Sometimes I have a little bit of question marks about his motor, but overall he's a good player. Very great backup center to have there for sure. Borderline starter, but at Brooklyn he'll probably be the backup. Seth Curry, absolute sharpshooter. And then Simmons, former first overall pick, very athletic, not a great shooter from outside with his jump shot or anything, but still a very talented player and a pretty good distributor. And at 6'11", playing like a point guard, that should help them, especially in Brooklyn where he doesn't have to be the guy to do the scoring, especially he doesn't have to be the outside shooter. Philly, they now add a star to their lineup and seem primed to go win the Eastern Conference, or at least compete for it. To college basketball, ESPN's Joe Lunardi released his latest bracketology report last night via his Twitter that included his top 20 teams and a more complete picture of the bubble for the 1 seeds. So he's got teams seeded 1 through 5, and then it cuts off there. So for his 1 seeds, first overall seed is Gonzaga. Then he has Auburn, Purdue, and Kentucky. The 2s are Duke, Baylor, Kansas, and Arizona. The 3s are Illinois, Providence, Wisconsin, and UCLA. The 4s, Villanova, Texas, Houston, and Texas Tech. A lot of Texas in that one. Wow, I didn't notice that when I was writing that down. And the 5s, Tennessee, Michigan State, Alabama, and UConn. The last 4 byes, so again, teams that won't have to play in the first 4. Loyola, that's Loyola Chicago, Oregon, Oklahoma, San Francisco. The last 4 in that would be playing in the 12 seed play-in matchups: Miami, North Carolina, Creighton, and BYU. The first 4 missing in the tournament would be Florida, San Diego State, UAB, and Washington State. The next 4 are Memphis, Mississippi State, Belmont, and St. Louis. And in this issue, he went even further to say that the next 4 out, God, that sounds awful, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Michigan, and SMU. Overall, Lunardi has 7 teams from the Big 10, Big East, and Big 12 in. The ACC, I believe, had 6, and everyone else, there were a few other multi-bid conferences, but those were the leaders there. CBS's Jerry Palm. I'm going to tell you now, there are a lot of pretty different opinions here, and didn't go as thoroughly in as to describe his last 4 in, first 4 out, all that. But he does have a full-on bracket out. I just went and looked at what was comparable to what Lunardi released through that bracket. So this is what Jerry Palm has at CBS. His number 1 overall seed is Auburn, but he does have Gonzaga also as a 1 seed, with Arizona as a 1 and Kansas as a 1. His 2s are Purdue, Providence, Wisconsin, and Kentucky. 3s, Duke, Houston, Texas Tech, and Baylor. Again, a lot of Texas flavor. 4s, he has Marquette as a 4. He has Illinois as a 4, UCLA, and Villanova. The 5s are Ohio State, Iowa State, Tennessee, and Michigan State. So some overlap, but there are a lot of teams in those top 5 seeds that Lunardi did not have either at that same level or not even included in the top 20 as well. The 12-seed play-in games for Jerry Palm are Mississippi State against Stanford and Miami against Florida. And then his 16-seed play-ins, which would be the small school, smaller conference tournament winners: New Orleans against Colgate and North Carolina Wilmington against Southern. So that's going to do it for the Travis on Sports podcast this week. Please be sure to like and subscribe and continue to follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and whatever podcasting platform you're using to listen to this right now. Thank you again for listening, and I'll have another episode for you next week.